If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. Let's begin today by putting a focus on two different questions. One that you would have for the narcissist and one that the narcissist would have toward you. The question you might nurse as you engage with narcissistic individuals is, who do you think you are? When you're interacting with a narcissistic person, it doesn't take a lot of time for them to eventually reveal that they think of you as being beneath them. Narcissists, by definition, have a real the need to be the most important person in the room. They're very enamored with themselves, and as a result, they can be very condescending. They can be easily critical. They can be chronically dismissive toward you, and haughtiness can be something that's naturally a part of the way that they engage with you. So you think, who do you think you are? Now, the question that the narcissist has in reverse toward you is, how many times do I have to remind you that you're beneath me? Now, they may not have the insight or the honesty to admit that that's what they're thinking, but indeed, that's what's on their mind. They honestly believe that you're beneath them, and the sooner you can figure that out in their way of thinking, then the better everything is going to be. Narcissists honestly believe themselves as being possessors of unique insight and unique understanding with respect to the way the world is supposed to be. And the rest of the schmucks out there that don't agree with them need to be put in their place, and they need to be reminded how they are indeed beneath them. There are multiple ways that narcissists will show themselves to be superior. First and foremost, you're going to eventually figure out when you're engaging with that narcissist that in their mind, you don't measure up, and you prove it over and over. Like I say, they need to be unique, and they're not at all bashful, whether it's with something like the rolling of the eyes or the chronic criticism, in letting you know that that's what they think about you. In addition, in their superiority, we know that these individuals are not teachable. Now, they feel like they need to teach and instruct you about the way things ought to be, but they don't need any kind of teaching in a reciprocal kind of fashion at all. For them, you see, when they admit mistakes, then that equates to a lack of worth and value. That means they're a failure. They don't mind letting you know that you're a failure, but they have a twisted way of thinking about notions of right and wrong and how it all fits in with human nature. They don't see themselves as equal in the least. That being the case, another way that you can see their attitude of superiority is that the rules or the procedures or the standard operating ways of doing things don't necessarily apply to them. They may have their preferences, and they may have their values that will agree until it gets in the way of them getting what they want. And then at that point, it's like, oops, we're going to change the rules. I've spoken with so many people who have engaged with people of a highly narcissistic bent who, let's say, have strong religious values, so to speak, or business ethics or social standards, until it gets in the way of them getting what they want. And somehow at that point, it's like, well, things change. And so they'll apply things that go counter to what they might publicly say because they have to stay in that position of superiority. And then if you attempt to point it out to them, they'll say, no, you misunderstood. Again, this is part of my uniqueness, which you just don't understand. But that's the way they operate. In addition, these individuals think that you're supposed to share the same interests as they have and the same preferences that they have. And if you don't, you're stupid. or you're defective. I mean, it can be something as simple as your taste in music, or your interpretation about how things could be done, or how you handle procedures or traditions in your family. Anything is fair game for these individuals. You have to think like them. That's how that's where the superiority leads them. That being the case, in their superiority, they can and will criticize you heavily, but you're not allowed to do so in reverse. It's like, no, again, I'm too unique for you to be able to do that. And even when they do little small things, like clean up the kitchen or take care of a task at work that was real simple, they want to make sure that they're praised. And they want to make sure that you see how excellent they are. And if you don't, they'll remind you. Narcissists in their superiority need to hear you deserve special treatment. And they're thinking, if you think that way, now you're catching on. Now, it's pretty absurd once you begin seeing this chronic need for them to be superior. What does this tell us that's going on behind the scenes? Because let's keep in mind that in their superiority, they're constantly trying to remind you have to play the inferior role. And here on our Surviving Narcissism channel, it's like, no, we don't need to do that. Let's look behind the scenes and remind ourselves, when a person has to have this ongoing superior, haughty approach towards others, they're working way too hard to make themselves appear significant. And it indicates these are fear-based people. And specifically, they fear being rejected. They fear being irrelevant. They fear you succeeding because somehow they think that means that they're being left behind. And in their fear, they come across in a cover-up kind of way. They present themselves in a false kind of way, like, well, I'm the one person that's really figured it all out, when in fact, no, it's all a part of compensation. They can't stand to think of themselves as having to be a regular person that is in the big pack with everyone else. In addition, we can see that the more a person comes off in this haughty and condescending way that narcissists do with their false superiority, they show very poor insight regarding human nature. They don't see themselves as having shared characteristics with the rest of humanity. In fact, they have a lack of curiosity about who you are, and therefore a lack of curiosity about who they are. They don't have empathy. They don't really like to enter in and say, hey, you feel this way. I don't always feel the same way, but I have some feelings that I have, or interpretations or misgivings. Let's talk about it, and let's share in our humanity so we can lift each other up. That kind of thinking doesn't cross their mind. It needs to, but a long time ago, they decided, no, I can't afford to do that because I'm going to lose my status. Another thing that this reveals is they mistakenly assume that if you have an elevated worth, it somehow diminishes their worth. It's like there's not enough worth and value to go around, so I've got to keep getting my fair share of it. And if it means I have to take your worth away from you, I'm willing to do that. And it's like, no, there's plenty of worth that goes around. In fact, the way that you can find your worth is to help another person find theirs. That's how it works. And they don't pick up on that concept at all. Also, it reveals that their understanding of ethics or standards are fluid at best. They're constantly looking at the rules of engagements in a way that keeps them in a positive light. But because they see life as being an ongoing competition, their rules and their standards tend to be shaky at best. To the narcissist, truth is expedient. It's all about propping up their false image of who they want to be, as opposed to being honest about who they really are. Now, that being the case, this has some multiple implications for you as you engage with them or try to respond to them. And first and foremost, let's just say you're walking down a dead-end street if you think that you can somehow bring this person to a better understanding of truth. Like I say, most of these arrogant and condescending narcissists are simply not teachable. So that being the case, you'll need to accept that as being what is, even though it doesn't match with what you wish it would be. But it also means that their opinion of you is rendered null and void because it's not based on objectivity. It's based on their neurotic and unfinished needs. And as a result, you just happen to be a player on their stage. And so whatever pronouncements they make, let's make sure that we don't give it a high level of credibility. I mean, I'm always going to be open to input from others, but this is not them giving input. This is them building themselves up at your expense. And that's no way to do life well at all. Let's also keep in mind that the arrogance that they maintain is directly attached to their anger style. And so you'll need to be wary of that and acknowledge that they can come on in fury, or they can hold on to contempt or be passive aggressive when you don't measure up. But rather than thinking that this means that you're defeated and vanquished, it just means you're in the presence of someone who is emotionally dysregulated, and their thinking pattern feeds their irrational emotional responses. So that being the case, make sure that if you are wanting to seek feedback about yourself, do so from people who are capable of combining facts and love. Narcissism, one of the primary indicators of narcissism is the lack of love. We do need to share our thoughts and input with each other, but we don't have to do it in a condescending way. And in fact, let's end by saying the more arrogant a person becomes toward you or anyone else, the more cartoonish they become. And in cartoons, they're a caricature of human nature. Some are exaggerated in their evil sense, and some are exaggerated in their bumbling sense. But my response is, I'm not going to let a cartoon character determine what I believe about myself and how I arrange my priorities. And I hope that videos such as this can give you some good food for thought, and it helps you as you try to figure out how you're engaging with these difficult individuals. If you've not already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so and hit that notification bell. We're going to keep more videos coming in your direction so that you can be somebody that operates with the insight that they don't have. If you have a need for therapy, and I know many times as you encounter these kind of topics, it prompts you to think, I could certainly use the help of somebody who can help me sift this out. We have a sponsor, and I'm quite pleased that we do, that will take you to online therapy. There's a whole team of licensed professional therapists that you can choose from. And so if that's a need that you would have, I would certainly encourage you to avail yourself to that. Also, I've put together courses, and they're very extensive. This is me, Free to Be, and then we have others that are on the way relatively soon that will walk you through in a therapeutic way about finding boundaries or how to find yourself despite the controllers in your life. And we have links below that will explain to you what those are all about. We also have links to my books, coffee mugs, and other things below. You know, it really is frustrating when you think, who do you think you are? And you know you're not going to get a response that's going to be satisfying. But these are, in fact, troubled souls. And I'm hoping you can at least know within yourself, well, I do know who you are, and you're not what you're trying to present yourself as being. The more you have that objectivity, the more it allows you to be a steady person as opposed to emotionally dysregulated. And I'm hoping that in the end, it allows you to be that person of peace.